This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you by Language Blend, the new best way to learn Spanish. Language Blend focuses on what you actually need to live and get by abroad with daily one-on-one lessons, a dedicated texting partner. It's like living in a Spanish-speaking country without ever leaving home. Go to languageblend.com for more information.
It's like if you're going to build something long term, you kind of need like clarity and peace of mind to be able to just exist without worrying about your month to month costs. And most people that I know are literally worrying about their month to month costs. That's, and I'm not talking about the poorest people in the United States. I'm talking about just everyday people.
Welcome back to another episode of the My Latin Life podcast. Since 2014, My Latin Life has been your trusted guide to traveling and living in Latin America. My guest today is Pardes Seleh. She's a writer and house hacker currently living in Bogota, Colombia. Pardes, how's it going?
Good. Very excited to be here today.
Thank you. And where are you calling in from?
Bogota, Colombia.
I'm glad we were able to make this happen. I wonder if some of our listeners will know you from your previous life as a political commentator in DC, or probably for the majority, maybe you got the fresh slate and we can just talk mostly about house hacking and Colombian stuff. But I'd love to just get a little bit of the background from you. If you could just kind of tell us briefly about your story and how you got to where you are.
Yeah, well, I spent several years working in politics, media, Fox News, Trump campaign, Daily Wire, all the good stuff. And I spent most of my time in DC doing that. It was fun in a lot of ways and very stressful in other ways. And I also really wasn't making money. And I was making a little bit of money, but barely enough to cover rent. And then I discovered hey, what if I I discovered house hacking as a way to gain financial freedom, which, it kind of reached this epiphany, hey, I can totally drop all this stressful stuff, make some money, live in a place for free, and get into real estate. And so when COVID happened, and we all kind of went remote, that was my cue to get into house hacking. I was able to qualify for a loan in Texas because I couldn't afford anything in DC. So when COVID happened, I moved to Texas with my remote job. Then, of course, they wanted everybody to come back in person. And I was like, sorry. And then so then I just stayed in Texas and started the house hacking thing. And then eventually moved my way down to Colombia. I don't know if I'm explaining it well, but that's pretty much my trajectory. Grew up in LA and moved to DC and then Texas and then a few little places in between and then Colombia, basically.
Yeah. What originally drew you to going out to DC and getting involved with political writing?
I grew up in a very Orthodox Jewish community. It was ultra Orthodox. The people who know it's called Beis Yaakov, my high school, Orthodox girls' school, very sheltered, and I wasn't really exposed to a lot of things outside of that community. Politics was an accident sort of thing. I was trying to go get a secular education and become a doctor, be pre-med, that whole thing. That was the only thing I could think of that was the coolest job ever. And then I met Ben Shapiro because we basically just met at my shul, my family's synagogue. And he was there for a speaking event. And I recognized him from the radio. I went up to him and he was like, hey, why don't you intern for us? And it was just I had never written anything before. Ben Shapiro at the time wasn't very famous, um, but he was like, he was like doing some radio stuff, and his wife was actually also in med school. She was kind of helping me out with my applications, and nobody wanted to intern for him because he was too like not famous to make the non-popularity be worth it for some people. But for me, like, I didn't care because I wasn't even in that world. So I was in my religious community. So I spent some time working for him, like interning, and then he offered me a job, and then I was like, yeah, screw med school, and I'm gonna do this, and it was fun. And then I ended up moving to DC, and then the rest is the story or whatever.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. Yeah, I didn't want to get too much into the DC stuff on this episode, but it's just pretty cool because it is a different background than any of the previous guests we've had. I don't think we've had a guest that's lived in DC or kind of been so close to, I guess, some historic moments in American history. But I guess eventually you got a bit disillusioned with politics and stuff like that, and that's why you decided to do something different. And that does resonate with our audience because I think a lot of people, they're getting disillusioned by just like working in New York or like a depressing, expensive city, and they want to maybe make the move to Colombia or Latin America, and just shake things up in their lives. And so to hear about how you made that switch would be interesting.
Yeah, you're speaking my language because I never grew up political. And my family, like, one thing they always taught me, because my parents are essentially nomads in their own way because they escaped from their country. Um, they always taught me from when I was little, like, never get involved in politics, never uh, get involved in like governments, things like that. Figure it out, do everything legal, and always like kind of um, be mobile. So um, this was like getting into politics was kind of an accident, and I did kind of get into it a little close to the sun, but my true passion is like basically what we're doing here. It's it's very liberating, and there's like I think like you can't really know how awesome it is until you just take a trip down to any country that you thought was a jungle and like just experience it for a week or something. Like,
Hmm.
I don't know, down here.
And how did you decide on Colombia?
Um, Honestly, my boyfriend mentioned Medellin. Like, I never heard of Medellin in my life. He was, you know, I remember asking him one time, like, if we could just get away, and we were both very stressed out, and having a lot of things to deal with. So I remember asking him one time, like, if we could just get away and like go to the coolest place ever, where would you go? He said Medellin, and I was like, I have no idea where that is. And I googled it, and I was like, okay, it's in Colombia. Like, googled Colombia, and it's like, oh, there's like drugs cartels. Like, I didn't know anything about Colombia. And then my friend Zach Milburn, who does Nomad Nation, which is like a traveling nomad group, he's like, hey, we're going to Cartagena. This was in August 2022. So he's like, hey, we're going to Cartagena. And I was like, so I told my boyfriend, and we were both like in different states. So we wanted to spend time together anyway. Like, hey, want to go to Colombia? And he's like, sure. And we like, it was just kind of a natural decision. Like, it wasn't like a long term thing that I knew that I was going to be here. And it was going to be a temporary thing. Like, we brought our hiking gears, like our hiking clothes, and that's it. Like, I brought 4 Walmart t-shirts and some stuff. I don't know. I still have all my stuff in storage, basically.
Yeah, so I guess you're early in the move. And so what's kind of the game plan? What's the game plan for Colombia?
Well, I mean, why change something that's working, you know? So we're basically like based out of here. We're traveling, taking trips out and building. You know, we both have stuff that we're building, um, businesses, or for me, it's writing a book, and um, all these things that you kind of grew up your whole life saying that you're going to do and you just never did, and all of a sudden you have all the time in the world because like your cost of living is a fraction of what it was back home, and you're like, okay, like why wouldn't I do that now? So,
Hmm.
and I sold my house. Yeah, it just
Would
like,
that be a Texas house or
yeah,
DC?
Texas.
Okay.
Yeah, just yeah, one property that was getting very expensive, even with tenants.
So how
Yeah,
long
just
were
like,
you doing the house hacking in Texas, and are you kind of applying what you learned from house hacking in Texas to Colombia, and you're looking to do more hacking projects in Colombia? Or bring me through that kind of progression of kind of like what happened in Texas, and how that's maybe influenced how you're going about things in Colombia.
okay, well, house hacking is a really great way of achieving financial freedom. Like, I know I sound like an ad, but I'm probably still gonna do more of it, but just probably on a larger scale when
Hmm.
when I'm ready. It was a little stressful. Basically, house hacking is when you um, buy a place or rent a place, live in one room, rent out the other rooms. So it's essentially hacking, living for free, and paying, basically living and paying your mortgage or your rent with by
Hmm.
having other tenants. So it's really awesome because right now, rents just keep going up, and if you have any kind of job, like I had a job that was when I started house hacking, I had a job, or I started house hacking years earlier, but through rental arbitrage, but it was kind of illegal and I got in trouble. So I'm going to scratch that part. If you can do it by buying a house, I think that's probably going to be the smoothest. Um, any job that you have, like go to the bank, find a lender and find out how much of a loan you qualify for. So for me, I was making
Hmm.
60K in DC doing my political job. I qualified for a loan of $230,000.
Hmm.
I bought, and then the only house that I could afford with that, that was like a 3 bedroom, like that where I could live in and also rent out other rooms. But that was also accessible to like a metro area, was in Texas. I mean, there were a few places actually, but Texas is where I ended up deciding on.
Hmm.
And so you basically, and then I got an FHA loan, which I don't know if I'm going into this too deep, but um, it for people
No, this
living
is
in
good
the
detail.
U.S. Yeah, FHA loans are basically for people living in the US. If you don't really have a lot of money, your first time buying a house, you can get qualified for a loan that's only 3.5% down payment. For me, that was $7,700 for the house that I bought, and altogether $10,000 to with all the closing costs. So I bought that house, ended up losing the job, and um, as quickly as possible fixed up the other bedrooms so I can live in one bedroom and rent out the other rooms. And then
Hmm.
that's basically, was covering my mortgage, and I ended up getting a restaurant job for additional costs, but like you could, theoretically do it without having a job.
Okay, cool. And how long were you running this hacker house or rental property in Texas?
Um so so far it's been so far it's been 3 years. I have one right now that there's a tenant and just a place that I used to live in.
And
So
and then so this was chugging along pretty well. I'm guessing you're starting to build feedback on the platform, on Airbnb, you're getting reviews. It's a bit of a flywheel, right? Where things start working better over time, or Airbnb starts pushing your ad up because you have good reviews. So it must have been chugging along a little bit. Why did you decide not to just like keep the property cash flowing and maybe rent out the extra room? Did you feel like you needed to be there, or was there any thought of doing like a property manager?
I didn't need a property manager. It's really easy to manage like yourself, but especially with Airbnb. And I also had I had a bunch of cameras and smart appliances. Like the door was Google. The door was a Google controlled door lock, doorbell
Right, the
camera,
Nest.
Nest thermostat. I don't know. I don't know what else. There was a remote control. The garage door was remote control. There's the lights were remote control. There's yeah, I don't know. So it's very easy to control. The only problem was that the cost of labor is really expensive. I think for me that was the main thing. It's just getting anybody to fix or clean anything right now is like, first of all, good luck after any natural disaster, like there was just an ice storm in Texas, good luck finding any plumber or any guy to fix like anything. And if you
Hmm.
do, like they're gonna charge you an arm and a leg. They will show up late to the job, and like I don't know, I was just getting really frustrated, and I really lost more than I made actually because I was spending so much on like all these different repairs that were like if I had just bought and flipped, I feel like I could have just like taken the money and ran, but it was like the maintenance that was um, really killing me, I think. And then also, I think that it's if you can, with Airbnb, you don't really need to have like a full building infrastructure with like official code and all that stuff, paying property taxes. Like, you don't need to do that. You can have a tent, you can have a yurt, you can like anything where people can have fun and sleep on your property or in your tent or in your whatever you build. Like, you can still charge the same much or even more because it's an interesting experience. And I just felt like I just felt like I was like an old fashioned landlord, that everybody hates. Like, I just didn't want to do that anymore. There's a way to be a house hacker that doesn't involve uh, playing that game.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. And then so you kind of got fed up with the house hacking thing in Texas, and you sold the house and made your way to Colombia.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you thinking of house hacking yourself?
I think it's very interesting. I think that alternative ways of getting value out of a property beyond like a traditional tenant lease agreement are very interesting. There's lots of ways to do it. So you're writing a book, right? You're writing the House Hackers Anonymous book. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about the book and maybe what people can expect to see in it? What are the chapters and themes that you're going to be elaborating on?
Yeah. So it's House Hackers Anonymous. Um, Sorry for ripping off everybody in AA. It's got 12 steps, but you know what? Jordan Peterson did it first with his 12 rules, so I don't feel too bad. So it's got 12 steps, and it's basically a guide for my younger self, like what to do, starting from zero, dumpster diving, homeless, all the way to step 12, where you're like an artist, you're just investing in other people's businesses and watching your portfolio grow and
Hmm.
sipping wine and, you know, charcuterie on a yacht in the Mediterranean, which is surprisingly not very expensive from what I've been researching. But um, yeah, it's basically just every step is like progression towards financial freedom. And I think financial freedom, people think of it as like a dollar amount. Like, I want to make $1 million. I mean, for me, I told myself I want to make $1 million by the time I'm 30. And then I realized, like, I don't really want to make $1 million because I could be making $1 million and still be strapped tight to like a corporate environment in
Hmm.
DC, and paying a boatload, or in LA, paying a boatload in rent, and not having any control of my schedule. And like the second I get fired, like my life is over basically. So, um, 12 steps to financial freedom: control over your schedule, control over your finances, ability to survive no matter wherever you are, and a lot of it's house hacking, and which I think is great. It's just great to know about house hacking because you can do it anywhere, and it's a way to live and make money, no matter where you are. Uh, you know, Apparently, from what I hear, it's you're less likely to get sued as a homeowner landlord in other countries. Although I haven't tested that for myself.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And so is this something that you're looking to implement in Colombia, doing a form of house hacking?
maybe it's possible. Um, yeah. So, um, buying foreign real estate is like, I don't want to do it until I have like all my I's dotted, T's crossed. But there's definitely tax benefits, for Americans, for American citizens. You don't have to report, you know, uh, foreign real estate on IRS Form 8938. I don't know if I'm being too detailed, but um, you just have to still, if you're going to use it as a rental, you still have to pay taxes on that. So just have to make sure that it works and it's like profitable. So for me, it would have to make sense as like a place where I'm living anyway, and then if I want to rent it out later, I could.
Hmm. Yeah, I guess we could come back to some ideas about how to implement this in Latin America, but I'd actually love to hear a little bit more about the 12-step program, starting at, I guess, dumpster diving is step one, and then
Yeah.
step
Yep.
12 is eating olives in the Mediterranean. So can we work through maybe those
Yeah.
12 steps or some of the highlight steps of that?
Yeah. Thank you, by the way. That's so cool that you want to talk about my book. So, all right. So, step 0 is actually dumpster diving. Like, your goal in step 0 is literally survive for 48 hours. And I know that sounds like silly, but it's more of a mental exercise. If you can survive for 48 hours, you are like, you've like convinced yourself that you're going to be okay. For people like me who are like always anxious. So just convince yourself you can survive for 48 hours. Step 1, get your official documents in line. Get your passport, get your ID, your social security number. Like, I know that sounds silly, but again, like, I don't think people are taught these things because a lot of people that I know don't have their passports. Like, it's just not something that people think about. Um, okay,
And what
step
was that other
2,
word you said? Get your gi?
get your ID.
ID. Okay, ID. Okay. So that would
Yeah,
be
get
like
your
driver's
like
license or passport.
Yeah, like if you move from state to state, for example, you're not gonna like get the state ID of like the place you move to right away, because like, why would you need it? You can just use your old state ID. But you might need it for driving or buying a car, things like that. It really depends. Like, I would really suggest that nobody ever get their California state ID for any reason whatsoever, and don't become a resident of California
I would
unless
agree with that. You
you're
actually kind of did the best thing because you were living in DC. I don't know if you were like a DC resident or like Maryland or
yeah,
something,
yeah,
but
DC.
you DC. So you did kind of we call it like the Texas two step, where you move to Texas for a limited amount of time. You get set up in Texas. You get a Texas driver's license, hopefully. all that stuff, become a Texas resident. And then when you move abroad, you're moving abroad having been a Texas resident. And so going forward, if you continue to live abroad, you'll continue, your most recent state was Texas, so you won't have to file a state tax return. As opposed to if you went straight abroad from DC, you would still be tied to DC, and I imagine they have a state income tax there, and so forth.
Yeah.
So you actually did a good step, potentially unintentionally.
That's so cool. The Texas two step. I like that. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's what I did. That's so cool.
Okay, so
Yeah.
and let's get back to, so we're surviving 48 hours. What does that even mean, by the way? Like in a tent? Like what are we talking here?
Um, so I basically have these little like exercises. It's like a checklist, like things that you can as like your homework basically for that section,
Hmm.
and you just have to survive, like find a place to live and eat, like food and shelter for 48 hours. Like if you can do that, then you've like basically graduated that step. So basically your first step is going to be to go to like friends and family, say like, hey, I need a place to sleep for 2 days, 2 nights. And if you can, and a part of that is just getting over your ego. And um, like it sounds silly, but I think a lot of people just don't have that faith in themselves. Like, oh, like what can I do? Yes, you can go to your sister, aunt, uncle, parents, like, hey, I need a place to sleep for 2 nights. If you can't convince them to do that, then you can sleep under a bridge, sleep in the back of a like, I don't know, a building that feels safe. Um, I'm not really explaining it. You can be a woofer. So, learning how to think on your feet and just find, sleep in your car. Find a situation that works for 48 hours. If you can do that, you can like get rid of a lot of your anxiety that has to do with survival. I think a lot of people are in fight or flight mode all the time or are really anxious. Will be like, always thinking about the worst case scenario. Oh my God, like if I can't make money, if I can't make my rent, if I can't do this, like then everything will fall apart. And this step is really just, this is exactly what's going to happen. If everything falls apart, like this is the worst case scenario, and we kind of go through it like in detail, and you kind of see that it's not, the worst case scenario is not like impossible. It's it's annoying, but it's not impossible. Um, So, yeah, that's step zero, surviving and
Okay,
dumpster diving.
got it.
Step, yeah, then you have step one, you got becoming official, getting all your paperwork ready, getting your passport, all that good stuff. Um, then, and part of that step, we have learning to barter and learning how to like have mutually beneficial arrangements. So, you ask for charity in step zero. Step one, you're asking for charity in exchange for, hey, maybe I can do something for you. I'll live in your guest room, but this is a little more long term. So maybe I can mow your lawn or something.
Hmm.
So that's step two. Got step three, downsizing. Wait, did I say step two? No, sorry, that was step one. Step two is um, making money, like just going out there and like literally hitting up businesses, talking to them, what to say, learning how to get in the mindset of generating income, and budgeting. So, and then also depending on what state you live in, this is like, I know it sounds really basic, this is really just like, hey, you like, your parents didn't teach you anything, let me give you some of like the lessons I learned.
No, I get it. It's good to build up from the foundation.
All right, so we got step two. So making money, and it's also like, going through like what states you live in, and really mostly for Americans because what state you live in is can be so different. Your life can end up being so different. Um, step three, downsizing. You know, learning how to work with salaries. Step four, um, basically discovering uh, what kind of um, person, what kind of worker you are. So, are you going to get a salary job? Are you going to become an entrepreneur, work for yourself, a freelancer? Or are you going to be a welfare king or a queen? Because honestly, you could actually start house hacking and make a lot of money as a welfare queen or king. And I had my real estate license in Texas, and I had a few clients that were doing that. They were buying real estate through um, government loans, which they secured through their welfare, mostly from California. So you can be a California citizen that is earning a certain amount, disability, social, like whatever your program is that you're getting that you're getting like a monthly stipend from the state of California. You can, and then people do this. I'll move to Texas, and then leverage that income to get a bank loan to buy a house in Texas, which they can start house hacking from. So that's basically an option. Leveraging basically whatever you have at that stage. So if I'm making sense.
Yeah. Do you think if you got that FHA bank loan, like you have to buy a property in the States, do you think you could use it to buy a property in Colombia?
I actually saw somewhere that you can use an FHA loan to buy real estate abroad. Um, you can definitely do a 1031 exchange abroad, which is interesting. Basically where you don't have to pay. You can like roll the value of one house into another house without paying any cap gains taxes on it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm actually googling it right now. Can you do an FHA loan abroad?
Yeah, we can confirm that. But yeah, keep running us through the list.
Okay. Um, okay. So you got, and then you got, step five is when you start actually leveraging loans. Go through all your loan options. There's VA loans have no down payment. USDA loans have no down payment. FHA loan is like very tiny. And then there's different. There's so many different loans actually. There's student loans. People get student loans um, really easily. I know in Canada it's like this, but I don't have experience myself. I just from what I hear, it's really easy to get a student loan with a really low interest rate, which people will. You as a student myself.
Hmm.
I remember there was always leftover a couple grand from the loan, which I you can people in my class would go on vacation with it. For me it was like, oh, I'm going to use this for house hacking and rental arbitrage. I did it wrong, but the point is that people do that. I don't want to make any recommendations actually, but there's just so many different loans that you can qualify for. You can get loans against your Bitcoin, hard asset loans. You can get loans against a property, home equity loans. Um, and there's credit card lines. You can get like a PayPal credit line, leverage that into rental arbitrage. So there's just so many ways that you can leverage money that you don't have into house hacking. And especially if you have any kind of job, or if you're an entrepreneur, if you have some kind of like S corporation that pays you a salary that you can leverage into a loan. There's so many like different options that people that I would love to make known. there's just a lot of there's a lot of ways to do it. And then step 6, you got house hacking strategies, all different house hacking strategies, whether it's rental arbitrage, renting out your a room in your grandma's house, live and flip, living in a place, fixing it up, renting out a tent in your backyard, and then also property management, because some people are like, well, I don't want to buy, rent, anything. I just want to um, you know, put other people's houses on the market, which you can totally make money from. Um, and then step 7, you have automation and globalization, which of
Hmm.
course just means that you're leveraging AI, which if you use Airbnb, that's you're already doing that. Globalization, just like, moving out of your home country and making and leveraging all the ways that you can save in taxes, leveraging the difference in cost of living. So for me, it was like I had 2 rental properties in Texas, and that was enough for me to live in Colombia, which is crazy because you can't do that in Texas. Um, and learning how to outsource, manage your properties remotely. And then you have step 8, you got your hacker hierarchy of needs. That's mostly just like mental sort of self-help stuff, goes through like Maslow's hierarchy of needs and like all the
Hmm.
obstacles that you might be going through when you're doing this stuff, and you're kind of like moving around, you're by yourself or you're with your partner, but you don't have friends. Then there's step 9, family of hackers, is about house hacking with family, um, parents, partner, kids, community. And then you got step 10, which is hacking the tax man. Well, I think I might change the name of this because I don't know if I want it to be called hacking the tax man or just hacking financial predators, but not make it about the tax man, because I don't want to be like I just don't want to make people angry. I spent like a bunch of time making people angry, and I don't want to keep doing that. So anyway, it's all just tax strategies. All the different ways to protect your assets also and avoid getting sued, because it's very easy to get sued, especially if you're a house hacker in the United States.
Hmm.
And like you can get sued, you can be broke out of your mind, you can be just like the poorest person ever and get sued for a lot because you're a landlord. So of course you have the money, and so basically lowering your settlement value, making yourself as unsuable as possible, and also saving taxes while you're reducing your taxes while you're at it. So that's
Hmm.
basically what that step is about. And then you have step 11, being a global entrepreneur, which is what you're doing, and I learn a lot from your channel. And then you have step 12, house hacking artist, which is basically that artist with all their passion projects and businesses that you're investing in, or entrepreneurs, and you're just basically having your money work for you while sipping wine on the Mediterranean. So
I like it.
thanks. Thanks. I'm like, so like, I don't know if anyone will actually like it. It's more just like itching a scratch for my younger self type of thing. Maybe I'm the artist. I don't know.
Which step do you think is like the most groundbreaking or something that you don't hear people talk about a lot?
Honestly, for me, I just feel like nobody ever talked about the basics. Like when I was trying to learn how to do my taxes, I know it sounds very straight up, but I really wished like I could go on YouTube and someone would be like, all right, like this is, and I know there are people doing this on YouTube, so I don't actually have an excuse. But I think for me, that was like what I was, just give me a crash course on life, dude. Like give me like A to Z what to do in order. Like just show me all the steps in like a very, very easy, like broken down format. So I don't know if that helps, but I guess from like specific steps in here, maybe the loan the I think step 5 actually, which is the step on leveraging loans because when that's like a it's not a big thing outside of the U.S., but in the U.S. the ability to leverage money that you don't have is like how everybody gets rich. So I think that's a really good step.
Leveraging loans. I think the stuff about lowering your liability or your exposure to legal pursuits is a good one too. Uh,
Yeah.
b- would you be able to expand on maybe some steps that people could take to uh, reduce their chance of getting sued and reduce their liability when doing house hacking?
Yes, start a nonprofit. um,
Oh,
but okay, so this is, I mean, I don't know if this is the best way to do it, but this is just one way that I've been thinking about a lot recently, and we actually decided we were like, wanting to start one. Nonprofits are like the best hedge against any kind of lawsuit. If you're getting a divorce, like non so remember how Jeff Bezos and Mackenzie, his wife, when they got divorced, it was like a whole big thing, and Mackenzie Scott uh, became the richest woman on the planet from a divorce or something.
hmm.
Like she just like walked off with half of Amazon shares. So around that time, Bill and Melinda Gates got a divorce, but like I barely saw a lot of news about it because Bill and Melinda Gates used a foundation to protect their assets. And when you use a nonprofit, there's no owners. There are no owners or shareholders. Like you're basically, it's the most protected legal, like from all. Just look it up, like LLCs, trusts, any kind of like trust with the best lawyers that you can find will never protect you from a divorce or a lawsuit or anything the way that a nonprofit can. You can like, you can, and then you can use a nonprofit to help with, as a, to help you with your for profit in whatever you're doing, whether it is, house hacking or, there just has to be like a way that you're contributing to society with that nonprofit. But the nonprofit itself can be selling things, generating value. It just can't be something that you cash out for capital gains, but it's something that can last very long. It can protect you, you and depending on what state you're in, like two other people can be board members. You can do this anywhere in the world, and if like you guys ever broke up and had a fight, it's never like one person is gonna run off with the money. It's always gonna stay within that like structure, if that makes sense. And in
Yeah.
order to run off with the money, you would have to leverage that to create value for your not for your for profit. Um, so like you'd have to be creative with it, but I think nonprofits like that's a really cool way to protect your assets.
And would you like draw salary from the nonprofit?
Yeah, yeah, you totally can. And if you're again, if you're an American citizen and you're living abroad, of course, you probably know about the foreign earned income exclusion. You
Hmm.
can, write off up to a certain amount, like six figures, which is like, great to have abroad.
Yeah, definitely. So you could have a nonprofit, take a salary of 120K from the nonprofit. Um, what happens if it makes profit though? A nonprofit.
Well, it's 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 in that legal structure. You can't just like cash out. It has
Yeah,
to
you can't
be like
cash out. So, but if it does make money, I guess it just stays there and like
no,
is in the
you can
coffers.
no, it doesn't just stay there. You can use it to pay vendors to do stuff for the nonprofit. You like so
Right.
Microsoft uh,
Invest.
corporation has a Microsoft.org. And this is like I really didn't know this. Like Google has a Google.org. Like all these companies that are really big, they have a nonprofit where like you know you pay for legal fees. You can pay your preferred vendors to do what you want, and those people are making a profit, and those people could be also owned by you. Like and I'm totally oversimplifying it. uh, Reminder, I'm not a tax lawyer or expert of any kind, please no one kill me. So this is just like stuff that I'm learning. um, it's it's awesome as like a subsidiary, or
Hmm.
if you use it like, what's the word, complementary to your for-profit structures. um, you can totally use it to spend money on the things that you want and make money from the things that you want. But like it
Hmm.
can't be in itself, like it can't be in itself a thing that you cash out from
Yeah, definitely makes
on its
sense.
own.
And remind me, so step 12 ended up being eating olives on the Mediterranean or something. How did we get there in terms of we were living off the cash flows of the house hacking, or how did we end up in the Mediterranean?
Through step 11. So we were living off the cash flows of house hacking, and actually in step 7, because when we automated and we like basically moved out, and we found a way to make the so maybe step 7 is the most important step for house hacking, because that's when we find out how to uh, totally automate our whole process. And then there's some countries where you don't really have automation, but you have like labor that is so cheap that you can kind of make up for that. So basically, you're at the level of being location independent and independent with your time.
Hmm.
Um, then you got 8 and 9 are really just like family and psychology stuff. And then and then 10 is taxes. And then 11 is um, when you really uh, officially become like an entrepreneur, because a lot of people, you know, are house hacking under their own name, or like a sole proprietor. They're not like, they don't have this as like their full time, like their full business. So generating like a wealth machine using your extra time, whether it's like doing what you're doing, helping other people do this, or you're coaching, or you're uh, a matchmaker. It was like an example I gave. Like you're just Sally the matchmaker, and you're helping people, nomads, make matches, or you're having a subscription, or you're helping people in like different countries and hiring people that are local.
Hmm.
So um, then from there, once you have like certain systems that you have in place, and I don't have like a lot of different types of it. Like I'm not talking about how to run like an oil and gas outlet. It's more just like online businesses that stuff that you can run remotely. Um, in step 11, and then being able to automate those systems so that you can, um, you know, pay other people to run them for you, and or invest in other people's operations, so they can basically do what you were doing prior, which is borrowing money to build uh, wealth creating system that you can then manage from wherever you are, at whatever time of the day, basically, on your own schedule.
Hmm. And so, do you think that these are steps that you would maybe implement in the United States and build a house hacking empire in the States and then live off the profits in the Mediterranean and Latin America? Or is this something where you could implement this 12-step process investing in Latin America?
I think I think you can make. I think it's. Um, I think you could definitely invest in Latin America. Like it's scary for a lot of people because it's just like a whole different ball game, and especially if you spent your whole life in one country and you're kind of like it got cemented into your mind that like nobody outside of this country ever makes money doing anything. It takes time to get used to it, but I think there's a lot of value to be created outside of the US. So maybe just a mixture of both. There's like we've been making a lot of friends down here.
Hmm.
There's people, and people are making good money. Like it's not the jungle. Like just because things are cheap, it doesn't mean that people aren't able to make a lot of money in Colombia, for example. So I don't
That's
know.
cool. Yeah, I think it's true. Like there's so many things you could do. Um, like you could buy a small piece of land, build a bunch of tiny houses on it, rent out the tiny houses. You could do well with a lot of things like that.
Yeah. Have you ever stayed at a Selena?
I have.
Yeah, they're like um they just kind of rinse and repeat their system in like so many different cities, and I like that they like if there is like they're able to charge so much more than Airbnbs and other hotels, even though their infrastructure isn't always that solid, because they're just like um, they're capitalizing on this whole nomad sort of culture. So they have like workspaces, and it's really fun, and you meet other people, and um, I don't know. It's
Mhm.
like they kind of took advantage of like what people want in addition to just like a place to stay, and just included it in their structures. Like I really like I like their business model.
Hmm. Yeah, there's a bunch of different companies. There's Outsite, Selena, of course. I think people are trying a couple different models in terms of either uh, hotels and hostels marketed towards digital nomads or more like co-living spaces with which are typically smaller properties and maybe it'll be like a surf co-living or a startup co-living, stuff like that. So I think we're starting to see a lot of different new concepts that are kind of changing the way we work and live.
Yeah. What's like your famous sorry, what's your favorite hostel that you've been to so far? Like hostel, hotel, Airbnb,
Um, that's a good question.
or
I
just a
mean, I
memorable one?
definitely personally, I need a private room. I'm just willing to pay for it. So I like a private room, but I think like a private room in a hostel or co-living type thing can be cool sometimes. In terms of meeting people and having like a built-in social circle, because it can be hard, traveling solo to a brand new country. And so if you are traveling solo, one option you have is to get a private room in a hostel, which can be loud, but or in a co-living space, and that way, these spaces typically have built-in events. Maybe they have everybody goes out, or they have trivia night, or any kind of event. So you have like a built-in crew to roll with, which is nice.
Yeah, you mentioned like, people traveling alone. I think that's like also a big reason why people end up like staying in hostels with a lot of people. Um, but has like, have you ever thought about traveling abroad with someone that you know from back home? And like, my boyfriend and I, when we started traveling, like it was like entering a different universe where we were like different people. Like everything, all the stakes were different. Like, I don't know if I'm making sense, but it was like being different people in a different place. And all the rules that applied when we were back in the States, like all of a sudden didn't apply. And we were kind of like, it was like being in a totally different relationship. And I think like, I wonder what would happen if, I don't know who's listening to this, but if you're like a single person and you're living in your home country, if you're like, hey, guy friend that I know or a girl female friend, like, want to go on a trip with me and just as an experiment, just see what happens. I don't know. Like, I feel like it's I don't know, it's fun, but I wonder if people, I don't know, I wonder how many people think of doing that.
Hey everybody, hey everybody. Quick break from the podcast to tell you about Language Blend, the best new way to learn Spanish. Language Blend was co-founded by Jake Nomada, friend of the podcast, decade of experience in Latin America, and Jake and his team, they put everything into this program that they wish they had in terms of how to level up quickly with your Spanish language skills. Because the faster that you can get conversationally fluent in Spanish, the better the experience that you're going to have in Latin America. So go to languageblend.com for more information. Yeah, I think traveling with a buddy, like a male buddy, it's something that I actually don't overly recommend because I think it helps people kind of stay in their old mindset from back home. And it's kind of like
Okay.
you and your buddy like judging each other basically. And like you kind of don't really get to get out of your shell. And I used to see
Yeah.
this a lot back in the day when I was more in hostels and stuff. It'd be like, two or three French dudes or German dudes or whatever, and they just kind of like eat every meal together, and then they like go walk to the beach together, and they're just kind of always together, and like I don't know, like it's just kind of like weird. Like you don't you. It keeps it kind of creates like a bit of a shell where it's hard to penetrate or it's difficult for someone in like a group of three to like kind of venture out on their own and start really sort of like interacting with their environment. So it kind of like creates some distance between them and the new environment. So I kind of prefer solo travel to traveling in a group of two or three. Um, but yeah, I mean, and then obviously traveling as a couple is a different dynamic as well. But that's I mean, that's obviously very enriching.
That's so interesting. I feel like I notice that a lot. People will insist on speaking their own language or, hanging out with like their own group of people. And it's like, you might as well just be in your home country then.
Yeah, it just doesn't leave enough room for spontaneity and just sort of like you're less mobile, you're less flexible as like a group of three versus like a single guy or whatever. Like, it's pretty easy to like tag along someone else's dinner as like a single guy or get invited into someone's home. But it's like when you have to invite like three people into someone's home or add on three people to some dinner or event, and it just makes it like harder to kind of do things.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Is there
Yeah.
like a minimum age that you think people should wait until they, before they start traveling outside of their
Minimum, no.
country?
I think people I literally think people should just skip college or university and just immediately start traveling and making money online. Probably start making money online before you travel. I mean, either one could work, but yeah, like college is pretty useless at this point for most professions, and
Yeah.
obviously very expensive. And if you can just start making like 2 grand a month online, being an assistant or like literally anything, just I highly recommend people just head on over to Colombia or whatever and just start living and having a different experience, because that's where you're really going to grow.
Oh yeah. And what made, like, did you always know that you were going to do that when you were younger?
I did. I didn't get started quite that early, but I read the 4 Hour Work Week very early on.
Yeah.
And the 4 Hour Work Week had a big inspiration on me and kind of put me on that path.
Yeah, I love the 4 Hour Work Week, and another one that was had a huge impact on me was Andrew Henderson, Nomad Capitalist.
Hmm. Did you buy the
Yeah,
book? You got like the hard copy or whatever of the
yeah, I got the
Nomad
hard
Capitalist
copy and
book?
I took it with me everywhere. I love Nomad Capitalist. I've
That's awesome.
watched like so many of so many Andrew Henderson videos that I could probably pretend to be Andrew Henderson and like spout off like, in my sleep.
And so when you watch Andrew Henderson or you read that book, like what does it whisper to you? What does it kind of tell you?
Life can be so much easier. Uh,
Easier. Okay. Why easier?
yeah, well, I mean, I just had a really hard time living in, like, because I grew up in LA, I lived in New York City, and then I lived in DC. I mean, New York City was very brief, so I didn't mention it, but it's just always lived in big cities that were just, looking back, like, whoa, those were so expensive, and everything, like the stakes were always so high. Everybody was like, I just, it was just really hard to ever feel like I'm keeping up financially. I was always in debt. I always had like 400 credit score. Um, I mean, in like the early years at least. Um, Also, like, just really didn't know anything about interacting with people. So like, I don't want to make it political, but I was a little bit clueless about how you're supposed to act with people in a way that doesn't make them angry, and I didn't really understand kind of social norms, social cues, and I just feel like, it's like, I was telling my boyfriend this the other day, like, there's nothing wrong with going to Harvard. In fact, you want to tell all your friends that you're going to Harvard, but you don't want to go to Harvard if you can't freaking read. You want to learn how to read first. You want to like build up to it, build your confidence, and then go to Harvard. Because if you go to Harvard and you can't read, then you're just the laughing stock of the whole school, and like you're just going to fail and waste all your money being there. So that's kind of, I don't know if I'm explaining it, but that's kind of how I feel about living in such a high standard type of place. I don't know. My family's from Iran. They uh, certainly like kind of built up to it in order, they spent many years escaping from their country, in a war, and like trying to get into the United States, learning how to make money. Like, it was a whole process. And so if I could like go back, I would want to live in another country that's kind of simpler, easier, like, build up to things. But I don't know. That's just me. Everybody kind of has like a feeling, wants something that they feel like they're lacking.
Hmm. And how do you think you've been able to simplify your life moving to Colombia?
Um, it's just so much cheaper. I mean, uh, so right now I'm just collecting rental income. Um, And I just, I sold my first property, and I'm working on this book. I sell weed in Texas. I have a license and I have a website and I sell weed, but I don't really advertise it because you're not allowed to advertise that. So this is not an advertisement. Um, and just little online stuff. I had a YouTube channel, is monetized. I took it down because I want to make it much better for my book.
Hmm.
Um, so and I'm constantly learning about new ways to make money, like that I could talk about with my people on YouTube. Like uh, I just watched a video of this girl who makes like a bunch of money selling her feet pictures um, on a website called funwithfeet.com. And there's so many of these like sites, like yeah, Fun with Feet. You sell pictures of your feet. Like there's dudes selling their feet pictures and making a lot of money. It's just crazy. Like there's just so much out there, and uh, I think the hardest part, as long as you're not living in a place like LA or New York, like and spending that kind of money on living, if you can just
Hmm.
take a few months living in like a really cheap place, living on your savings, and like figure out what it is you want to do. Um, there's so much to do. There's a lot of ways to make money, easy money.
Yeah, living somewhere cheap is definitely a game changer.
Yeah, because it's like it's not just your day to day. It's like if you're gonna build something long term, you kind of need like clarity and peace of mind to be able to just exist without worrying about like your month to month costs. And most people that I know are literally worrying about their month to month costs. And I'm not talking about the poorest people in the United States. I'm talking about just just everyday people worrying about their main worry right now. If you're like, hey, what are you worried about? They're worried about like their costs at the end of this month and 5 days from now. And
Hmm.
that's kind of like it's impossible to build anything from that state of like thinking and feeling, I think.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. So being able to stress less about the cost of living, definitely huge. And then what about just like the lifestyle? Like, do you find people are friendlier? Maybe the food, things like that?
Yeah, it just feels like I don't feel like I'm being what's the word? Nickel and dimed a lot. We
Hmm.
walk a lot. One thing we love in Colombia is that every Sunday they close the streets and the culture is very nature and outdoorsy, naturey and outdoorsy. If that makes sense.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's easy because it's like the weather's actually good. So every Sunday the streets are closed. Everybody goes running. Dogs, children, grandmas, I want to be a grandma that goes running in Bogota on Sunday morning or Medellin. Um, like it's just like a different world. They have a biking holiday. Like what country has a biking holiday? They have a holiday where everybody goes biking, and um, it's rarer to see fat people then and not to say that you shouldn't be fat, but just I I know that being just the health people are just healthier. Like people we see are just healthier on average. And and I'm not blaming anybody that is not healthy, but more just I think it's probably a little easier to be healthy down here, because yeah, your food you're eating is simpler, less processed. There's so much opportunity to be outside, and like we've been trying all sorts of new things. Like we've been going rock climbing. I mean, we weren't doing this stuff back in the States. Back in the States, we were both like fretting. I mean, I was getting high all the time. Like, this is different. Like, we're going, we're looking for a swimming pool now. Like, I've been taking pole dancing classes. We did Japanese martial arts. It's just like, we've been going to doctors. Like, I never used to go to the doctor unless I was literally in the hospital and dying. That was the only time I saw a doctor. Like, we're like actively going to the doctor now. And
Got
yeah,
it.
people are so friendly. My doctor here, I don't know. I could go on and on. Sorry, I could go on and on.
No, keep going. This is gold. This is gold. It's so funny that about the doctor that people are just so afraid to go to the doctor in the States because of what it's going to cost, so they don't go. But like in Latin America, it's just so cheap. Like in Mexico, I can go to the doctor for literally $2.50 and get a
Whoa,
checkup and get prescription or whatever I need.
good. Yeah, that's like that's how it should be. And then also another thing about the states is like, so in addition to it being more expensive in the states, there's also just a higher demand because everybody. Two more things. So there's also a higher demand because everybody needs the doctor because everybody's less healthy. Sorry, I'm not blaming anybody for being less healthy. That's me. That's me. I
Hmm.
was less healthy. And then the other thing is also doctors are so afraid of liability. Like, they're so afraid to take you. Um, my you know I've just been hearing so many stories recently. My sister, my friends, like, people have been going to the doctor and the doctor's like, yeah, I can't take you because, like, I don't want to like risk blah blah blah. Like, they don't want to like do a certain treatment or do a certain thing that is maybe life saving or that the person really needs because of the liability. Like, they might get sued or like get in trouble with the insurance company. And there is like, I don't really feel like there's a lot of that down here. Like, my doctor texts me on. I never had a doctor text me. Like, here in
On
Bogota, my
WhatsApp.
doctor texted me. Yeah, on WhatsApp. She texted me the other day to wish me a happy Women's Day. I didn't even know it was Women's Day. It's like,
That's great.
it's, yeah. I mean, it initially was like, let's save money, but then it was like, oh, cool. Life could be so easy. Like, let's, whatever that, like, let's just do this.
So no regrets.
No regrets.
And did you get a residency visa by like showing that you had rental income from your property?
Do I get a visa in Colombia?
And yeah, in Colombia, are you on a tourist visa or did you get like a
Oh,
residency visa?
honestly, I'm still on a tourist visa. Like, we've been talking about it and we've been going back and forth. So, what would you do? Like, do you think that because there's the benefits of being a resident in a place, you don't have to, I mean, we travel anyway, so our tourist visa keeps resetting anyway. But in terms of like from a tax or liability perspective, would you rather be a resident?
I would definitely do it because you have that rental property, and you could probably use the rental income to get a visa in Colombia, saying like, oh, we have the means to sustain ourselves through this rental income.
Okay. And then that would be that would put you on track for a passport.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it'll take a number of years, probably like 5 years or more, but eventually, yeah.
What would you say are what would you say are the main benefits of becoming like a tax resident in Colombia?
Well, you can become a legal resident without being a tax resident, right? So you can get the legal right to live there. And then if you spend less than 6 months, you don't become a tax resident. But you can, you know, but you can still be working towards a passport and have no problems getting in and stuff like that. Uh,
Yeah. And it
really,
sounds
like
like
with
it,
good.
yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, it also it sounds like if you're even if you're a citizen, you don't have to pay taxes. Like up until I think it was like 78 million pesos a year, you don't have to pay taxes. You don't even have to file taxes. And then also, if you live in Colombia less than 6 months, even as a citizen, you don't have to necessarily be a tax resident.
I don't want to speak to like too many specifics. We can definitely help people offline with situations like this. So you can get in touch with us, and we have like residency lawyers and tax lawyers for Colombia and for pretty much every country in Latin America. But the point I just wanted to make was because you have a rental property in the States and that's cash flowing and bringing in rental income, you can typically bring that to any country in Latin America and say, and it's called a rentista visa. And basically you demonstrate like, look, we're getting a certain amount of rental income in the States, so we'll be able to support ourselves in Latin America. And uh, you could then use that to get residency in Colombia or in another country as well if you want to try. I don't know, who knows, Guatemala or literally anywhere else. So definitely keep that in mind.
Nice. And what is your ideal? What has been your ideal client, by the way? Like, sorry, I just was thinking about this. Like, what's your ideal um, for people that are watching? Like, your ideal client? I don't know that you feel like has benefited the most.
Yeah, I think it's going to be someone that's already figured out how to make money online or have a remote job or perhaps make money passively like yourselves. So they already have the income aspect of things figured out. And now they have that location independence and that freedom to live in Latin America, to potentially get a couple different residency permits, to work towards a second passport, to optimize their taxes, etc. So it's really the income piece is the key that unlocks everything else.
Okay, and another question I had, I'm so sorry, I just remember this.
Go
What
for it.
would you like? What would you add to my book? Like I know you probably don't remember all of it, but just from what you remember, what do you feel like House Hackers Anonymous is lacking? If you had to say like for the audience that I'm targeting, like people that are just like it's really just like a basic like summary of everything. What would you say is missing that's really important?
I would say you could probably speak to the trends that are occurring in co-living and house hacking, and there's all these sort of related terms and slightly different concepts, but just like maybe provide a bit of a overview of the landscape of how people are iterating on this concept right now, and just so people have an idea of some of the different things that people are doing and the creative ways that this is being implemented.
Yeah, because it's constantly changing.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's important. Thanks.
Yeah. So, what do you think is going to be your plan after Colombia?
After Colombia, which I could see us staying here longer and longer, but we're still very dedicated to traveling because there's so many places that we want to see. Um,
Hmm.
we there's just so many countries on our list that we want to check out. So it really depends on how fast we can afford like traveling to the really far strung exotic places, but eventually I really want to check out Georgia, um, Thailand, Croatia. I don't know, there's like just um, parts of Africa and um, Argentina. And then of
Yeah.
course like we're basically just traveling all over Latin America right now. Like we're like it's not like we're based out of Bogota, but we're basically just using this as our launching pad.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's really cool to hear how you guys have started to pursue a life of travel, living in Colombia, and kind of seeing the differences of what's out there beyond the United States. And I'm sure you've had a lot of aha moments around along the way.
Thank you, and I love to see what you're doing, and like just keep it up. You're helping a lot of people, and you know they're like I know you get paid and you have clients and you're coaching people as a business, but it's also you're kind of adding a lot to the culture, um, and you're like letting a lot of people know for free that they have options. So that's pretty cool.
Doing it for the culture.
Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, I guess we'll get to wrapping up the episode. Do you have any message that you would like to share the audience with the audience?
YOLO. I'm sorry. Um, I'm still stuck in gringo culture, so that's all I was able to produce. But you know what? In a few months, you'll hear a very cool and more modified version of that. So stay tuned.
Yeah, I can't wait for the book to come out. What platforms are you going to release the book on? Is it Amazon, self-published? Tell us a little bit about the
Oh
game
yeah,
plan.
Amazon KDP all the way. Amazon KDP Select. If anyone's doing books and stuff, I used to work with publishers in DC and New York City, and I have concluded that self-publishing is the way to go and have control and make more money. And also, Amazon will. This is I'm not getting paid to advertise Amazon, but Amazon will pump up your book, and I've published on Amazon before. They will promote your book for 90 days as long as you don't publish it anywhere else. And they have exclusive rights, and as long as it's like an ebook format,
Mhm.
basically. So they'll do a lot of your marketing for you, which I won't need because I'm going to do YouTube as well, but it's nice to have. So, yeah.
I like it. Yeah, so everyone keep an eye out for the book. This episode will probably come out right around when the book drops, so we'll try to time that as well as we can. But yeah, Pardes, thank you so much for joining us on the episode today of the My Latin Life podcast. Really inspiring hearing your story, and wishing you all the best on the future travels.
Thank you so much. And you too. Thank you for having me.